Is the Federal Reserve trying to cause an economic depression? Michael Snyder reports, they actually did it, even though banks are collapsing. The commercial real estate market is imploding. Home sales are plunging, and large companies are laying off workers all over America. The Federal Reserve has just decided to raise interest rates even higher. This is nothing less than economic malpractice. Now, my comment here is the first thing that we learned in Economics 101 is when you have a recession and unemployment, you have to take a helicopter, open the doors of the helicopter, and start throwing money out over the people. In other words, give them money in order to spur the economy into activity again. Now, going back to this is nothing less than economic malpractice. They know that higher rates are crushing the economy, but they believe that more pain is needed. Officials at the Fed just hiked rates another 25 basis points, that's 0.25%, and they are now the highest that they have been since August 2007. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday raised its benchmark interest rate by a quarter of a point that opened the door to a long-awaited pause in the most aggressive tightening campaign since the 1980s. The unanimous decision puts the key benchmark federal funds rate at a range of 5 to 5.25%, the highest since August 2007, from near zero a little more than a year ago. It marks the 10th consecutive rate increase aimed at combating high inflation. When the Fed raised rates that high in 2007, it didn't exactly work out so well, did it? The next year, we plunged into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, and now a new economic crisis has begun, and even CNN is admitting that higher rates will make things even worse. Meanwhile, investors are still coming to terms with a rapid run-up in rates, which sparked a huge sell-off in U.S. government bonds and stocks last year. Banks that failed to adequately prepare have been hammered. The shifting landscape paved the way for the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in March and First Republic Bank this week. More pain could be on the way. The commercial real estate sector, which is very sensitive to high interest rates, looks particularly vulnerable, its problems made worse by a glut of empty office buildings in the wake of the pandemic. In particular, higher rates will put even more pressure on hundreds of banks that are already teetering on the brink of insolvency. And when banks are struggling to survive, they get really tight with their money, and that is why we're now facing a big-time credit crunch. The data suggests a credit crunch has started, Morgan Stanley analyst Mike Wilson said during a recent episode of the firm's Thoughts on the Market podcast. During a credit crunch, banks significantly raise their lending standards, making it difficult to acquire a loan. Borrowers may have to agree to more stringent terms like high interest rates as banks try to reduce the financial risk on their end. Fewer loans, in turn, would lead to less big-ticket spending by consumers and businesses. If the goal of the Federal Reserve was to curtail economic activity, what they had already done is already working. So there was no need to hike rates even more. Just look at some of the things that have happened over the past few days. For example, FedEx Freight has announced that they will be permanently closing 29 locations. FedEx Freight is closing 29 locations later this year and will begin another round of furloughs for some employees at the end of May, the company announced on Monday. FedEx Freight plans to close the locations and consolidate its operations into other locations effective August 13. When asked about where the locations set for closure are, a FedEx spokesperson said the company did not have that information to share at this time. And Vice Media has announced that it is preparing to file for bankruptcy. Vice Media is preparing to file for bankruptcy after attempts to find a buyer for the company, once valued at $5.7 billion, appeared to be going nowhere. More than 5 companies have expressed interest in acquiring Vice, the New York Times reported on Monday, but the chances of a sale are seen as increasingly remote. The decline of Vice comes a little over a week after BuzzFeed News announced its closure, and 3 months after Vox laid off 130 people, representing 7% of staff. Even GM is feeling the stress of this economic environment. According to USA Today, earlier efforts to reduce their workforce were not sufficient, so they will be giving the axe to hundreds of contract employees. General Motors terminated several hundred contract employees who worked at its Global Technical Center in Warren, Michigan, and other locations this weekend in its bid to shave $2 billion from its budget by the end of the next year. The cuts came nearly a month after 5,000 salaried employees agreed to a voluntary separation package that GM said would help it achieve close to 50% of its cost-cutting target this year alone and prevent further involuntary cuts. Meanwhile, more retailers continue to go belly up. In particular, I was greatly saddened to hear that Tuesday Morning is going out of business and closing all of its stores. Tuesday Morning is going out of business, closing all of its stores, and it's the second major U.S. home goods retailer to go bust in recent days. The retailer announced on Facebook and its website that it has started a going out of business sale with 30% of discounts on its products sold at its roughly 200 remaining stores. Customers have until May 13 to use their gift cards, and locations will start closing in the coming weeks. Do officials at the Federal Reserve not understand what's going on here? It's a bloodbath, and they just made things even worse. And it isn't just for us. Economic activity is rapidly slowing down all over the world, and officials at the Fed have chosen this moment to sabotage the central hub of the entire global economy. If we plunge into economic depression, the entire planet will feel the pain. We better hope for a miracle from somewhere else, because economic conditions are deteriorating a little bit more with each passing day, and officials at the Fed have made it abundantly clear that they do not plan to help us. This is by Michael Snyder. This is about the author. My name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, commissions earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing. And one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss any of the latest updates. I've published dozens of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. And this is on the Economic Collapse blog by Michael Snyder. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.